All right. So, um, still no. Okay, now we got it. So good to see you, Zach. You said you had a question about Nibbana. Can you elaborate on your question?
Yeah, I can. Um, so my question is, how is Nibbana obtained? How does it happen or unfold? And is it an oxymoron to want to obtain Nibbana?
Okay. Now I hear the echo again.
Maybe I'll pop in some earbuds and
Uh,
that will fix the issue.
wait a minute. Wait a minute. Now it's gone again. It's gone again. So we're good to go. Um, so the the question about Nibbana is often asked in the way that you're asking it because this is a very kind of Western way of looking at things. That in fact, uh, Western Buddhism has a lot of issues about attaining things. There's a lot of attainments, okay? They attain meditation states, they attain jhanas, they attain sotapan, or they attain nirvana, or something like that. And this is all the point about the attainment is going in the wrong direction. A much better way of looking at it is that you've already attained everything that needs to be attained.
Mm.
All right.
Okay.
That life is not just doing one job after another. That life, in fact, should be doing just enough to be completely satisfied so you don't have any more to do. And when there is more to do, you do just enough and then you're satisfied again. So let's introduce Nibbana from the perspective of one of the ways that it's taught. That in fact, the original word Nibbana, the Buddha was very good at taking words that already existed and giving them a slight twist of definition,
Mm.
a more noble way of looking at it. But the word Nibbana still has the same thing that it did back then. It's in the Western mindset that they've made it so big and so gross and so grandiose and so finalized. Um, that in fact, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa has a book, the name of it is Nibbana for Everyone. And in that, he talks about little Nibbanas. That
Mm.
what we need to cultivate and develop is little Nibbanas because that will go in the direction of having longer lasting or slightly bigger nibbana, so that's all that we're interested in is having just a little nibbana. This moment will do. I don't need nibbanas forever, just one now will do fine. And yet the Westerners have this time capsule built in that right now doesn't mean a thing. It's got to be enduring. Now is not ever good enough. The future has to prove that now was good enough. And you see that as part of the uh, capitalistic view, in the sense that the guy says, I made some money on the stock market. And the old man says, yeah, but can you keep it? Can you make it grow? Now is not good enough. You've got to do better next time. Okay. So when we recognize that a little nibbana means that right now, in this very moment, things are okay, they're cool. That in fact, the original definition of the word nibbana was used in two contexts. One was in the context of animal training, and the other was used in context of cooking food.
Mm.
So we can think of it this way, that when the food is cooked, we take it off of the stove to let it nibbana, to let it cool, to let it chill off a bit, because food that's coming right off the fire is too hot to eat.
Mm.
The same thing is true with, let us say, the domestication or the capture and training of wild horses, wild elephants, And these two, by the way, it's fairly well established in the suttas that because he was a prince in his early days, that the Buddha actually, as a prince, learned all about horse training and all about elephant training. And now he recognized, oh, the training of the human mind is very much like the training of an animal.
Hmm.
And that the first thing that they do with the elephant before they actually teach it the skills that they want, like the skills of warfare, the skills of bearing riders and bearing weights and all of that, is that they have to get the elephant to chill out. And how they do that is by staking normally the back hind leg of the elephant, especially a bull elephant. They will take the hind left leg and tie it with a vine or a rope to a stake in the ground. And you would think the original point was that they've got to stake that stake in the ground so strong that the elephant cannot leave.
Hmm.
Actually, no, that's not what happens. That the thing of it is that these elephants are fairly big thing. Even if you sunk a whole tree stump or a tree log into the earth, if that elephant is able to take that left hind leg and stand on the other three and just swing it to its limits, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, it's going to weaken that vine. It's not steel. And it's going to help loosen that log that they've got fastened to the ground. And the elephant's going to escape.
Mm-hmm.
But the Manute knows something about the elephant. He knows where he's going to go to because the elephant always goes home. It always goes back to his favorite place. So the animal trainer knows exactly where that elephant is. He goes and captures it again, stakes him out again, and goes through this several times. And then the elephant begins to get the point next time that he's tied up. Oh, what's the use? Even if I do get free, they'll just go get me anyway. Which is different than the elephant has never escaped. Because if the elephant has never escaped, he always has the idea, I can't escape, I can't escape. But the training is, oh, yes, you have escaped, and it didn't do you any good.
Hmm. Okay. Interesting. Yeah,
Right.
I've heard that analogy applied to the breath. Like the mind will wander away and you bring it back. So you have like that stake for the mind to keep coming back to.
That's exactly the analogy, is that we stake the mind to the breath.
Hmm.
And the mind will wander away, and we keep bringing it back and bringing it back. And in the process of bringing it back and reestablishing it, that the mind gets more comfortable being there, especially when we're practicing that. So when an animal Dhammanas, that means that he's no longer trying to escape,
Hmm.
that he finds his freedom where he is. And that in fact the elephants quite like to be around humans anyway, especially to get free food. I mean, the humans are bringing the food, and all he has to do is carry a trifle here and there. So this is what it means about domesticating of animals, is that they have to Nibbana. And they Nibbana along with the training, but right from the very beginning, they need to Nibbana some. Well, this is what we do with house pets all the time. And in fact, I've got dogs in Nibbana right here on the porch because they're not interested in doing anything. They're not interested in escaping. They're not interested in going and getting anything. So, in fact, you were correct in asking the question, is Nibbana something that you want? And the answer to that is that wanting Nibbana is solid proof you don't got it and you won't get it so long as you want it. Because Nibbana is the satisfaction that everything is already okay. Or the point about the food now is that once the meal is cooked, you take the food out of the oven and let it cool, Nibbana, and then it can be eaten. You don't want to eat it before it's cooked, and you don't want to eat it while it's still hot. You want to wait until after it's cooked, after the job is done. You could cool off. That's what people do. I mean, imagine a prize fight, a 15-round heavy-duty world champion boxing match, and after the 15 rounds are up, both the winner and the loser both go get a massage and relax. And in fact, you could say the end of every 15-round prize fight is Nibbana, because they can rest and relax when it's over. So wanting to attain Nibbana is almost that's the oxymoron.
Right.
Because Nibbana is after the catching is done, or after the food is cooked, or after the mind is captured and on the breath. You see, they even talk about it in the sense of the monkey mind. That jumps and jumps and jumps and jumps and jumps. That's like the wild animal or the wild elephant or the wild mind. It just jumps and jumps and jumps. But one of the things that we have to look at is the reason that the monkey mind jumped, was because it was not satisfied where it was. And so it jumps to someplace new, and then it winds up being not satisfied there. And so it jumps again to someplace new. And then it's still not satisfied, so it jumps again.
Sounds familiar.
So what we need to do is to practice being satisfied. That we like it, that we can find joy in it. Now there's a trick in there, and that I've seen many students go through this. In some cases, it's like this: that he practiced, he heard what I said, he got a big load out of it, he felt really good, he goes, he practices, and he feels really good, he's got satisfaction and joy and all that kind of stuff. The next day he tries it, and he doesn't have quite the same level of satisfaction and joy, and so he wants more. He's actually at that point now bringing in the critical mind that's comparing today with yesterday, but it's not actually yesterday he's comparing it with. It's a built-up exaggeration of yesterday that he's had in his mind to compare today with, to see that today's not good enough.
Right.
Okay. So another way of looking at it is that it's not actually joy that we're trying to cultivate so much, that the joy comes along with the satisfaction. That is satisfaction that we're actually cultivating, of being okay with how I feel right now. And if I feel really okay with the way that I feel right now, even if it's gloomy, by being satisfied with it, at least I'm taking some joy in being satisfied with it, and that satisfaction then will bring the gloom out into joy. But the satisfaction is what we're looking for here. Like after the job is done, we're satisfied that the food is cooked. Now it's time to let it Nibbana, let it cool off. And so that's also the same with the monkey mind. Now that the monkey mind has landed here, wherever here is, let him become satisfied enough with it so that he becomes comfortable there. And the comfort and the satisfaction together then become Nibbana, or the cooling off, or the chilling out. That in fact we have that built right into our language. It's part of our culture. In Thai language, they have jai yin. Now the word jai actually has many different uses, but they always point to the word heart. But everything else around it is jai this and jai that. Jai ron is hot heart. Jai yin is cool heart. Jai dam is black heart. Plek jai is surprised. So they've got all of these different words around the word jai, but I'm looking at the word jai yin in the sense that that's what they tell people that are hot. Jai yin, jai yin, jai yin, cool off, settle down. We hear that in school when the teacher is trying to talk and the kids are in the back talking and the teacher hears it. She'll say, "Cool it." That's another use of the word right there. The whole idea is cool off, which means that heat has the quality of agitation or movement. And agitation and movement is doing the job, working, getting the job done. Once the job is done, we can rest. So what we need to do then with our practice is to find tasks to do that are so easily done that we can congratulate ourselves for doing that task yet once again and then relax. And we feel successful because we've done that task. And that task is both very easy to do, dead easy, and also almost almighty in its difficulty. It depends upon your opinion of it. Most people think of it in the sense that it is very, very difficult because that's the Western mentality of it. In fact, what we're talking about here is change. And the West has an idea that things that things can change, but it's very difficult to get them to change. That progress is slow, okay? And that the Bible is actually based upon this in the sense that, especially the writings of Paul, is, and his basic statement is, hey man, you can't do without Jesus. You're not good enough. You can't change. You need Jesus to be saved. You can't save yourself. You don't know how to do that. And if you did, who are you to be good anyway? Only God is good. You hear all of that stuff, and it's built into our culture. But almost the idea is that when we're children, we're like wet cement, and we can be formed and shaped into something when we're still wet, but when we dry out, we're solid and we can't be manipulated. But in fact, the reality is that the brain is goo. It's goo as a baby, it's goo as a child, it's goo in adulthood, and it's goo in old age. It's not fixed.
We talk about having a growth mindset. So yeah, like I suppose a fixed way of looking at things would be, you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
That's it. That's another expression of that. Can't teach an old dog new tricks. Guess what? Old dogs can learn new tricks when old dogs want to learn a new trick. The trick is to get them to want to do it.
Right.
And then they can learn. That's very interesting that way. Humans are that way too. Not that different from dogs.
Yeah, I see how you could get stuck in your ways, or if you're in a pattern or a habit loop that has been going for such a long period of time, it feels like it can be really challenging to break out of that because seemingly the grooves on the habit seem very deep.
That's especially true when, like, being stuck in a rut or a gutter and you get back out on the pavement only to find yourself back in the gutter again, and then you work really hard or whatever to get back on the pavement, and all of a sudden you're back in the gutter again. Then you get back up on the pavement. And what we don't realize is that getting back up on the pavement is the skill that we're wanting to develop, and the ability to stay on the pavement is the next skill to be developed. But what we do is we hate being in the gutter. And so what's really going on here is that we don't know that we can change, that we think that we're stuck in the gutter. Because we've been in the gutter so many times. And the real point is that we can change that. We can get out of the gutter. Then, in fact, what's really going on in most people's lives is sometimes you're in the gutter and sometimes you're on the road. I like to say it, sometimes you feel like a nut and sometimes you don't. Sometimes we're riding a horse backwards and sometimes we're riding it forwards. This is what a Nietzsche is all about. Things go in cycles. You could think of it this way: is things black or are they white? And as soon as you see things black, they'll begin to turn white. And as soon as you see things white, they'll start to turn black again, because everything is in a cycle. And nothing is either black or white. It depends upon who's looking at it and how they're looking at it.
Yeah, it almost sounds like seeing a spectrum, or like allowing for the gray space, or things in between.
Right. Another way of talking about it then is the big picture really is bigger. The big picture is that when we begin to see things, that when we're close to it, let us say that there's a merry-go-round, and half of it's painted white and half of it's painted black. And when we see it, and we see the white side of it, we feel good and we like it. And then when the merry-go comes back around and it turns dark, then we don't like it. And we get caught in this wheel of liking and not liking, and we're ignorant of the fact that the merry-go-round is just a merry-go-round. Part of it's black and part of it is white. We have to get above it or get away from it. Get back so that we can get a better perspective. Okay, so this merry-go-round that we're talking about actually is the human mind. That sometimes we feel like a nut and sometimes we don't, means that sometimes we're having wholesome thoughts and sometimes we're having unwholesome thoughts. And so we need to start paying attention to these thoughts so that we can begin to correct it, so that those thoughts that are unwholesome, we can change them to wholesome thoughts right then and there. Because your mind is not a merry-go-round. It's much more pliable than a merry-go-round. Okay? And so things come around and go around, but they can go around, and every time you see that this section is unwholesome, you can paint it wholesome again. This is an easy thing to do one by one as they occur. And it seems impossible to do the next time you find some dark place in the merry-go-round. Oh, we've been through this, and there it is, all dark again. Oh, poor me. Okay, and we go back into our dark space when we see the dark areas on the merry-go-round, and we start to have a pity party again. Instead of saying, hey, there's just another thing to paint. We can paint that too. We can take that unwholesome thought out and put a new wholesome thought in, until we get to the point that we have one wholesome thought after another after another. And when we have that, that's a really big congratulations. And we recognize that, oh, I can have wholesome thoughts, one after another after another. And that's when we can actually begin to relax.
Part of my mind has a question right now about the tendency to cover over problems. So I think it might be like called spiritual bypassing in Western circles. And I'm wondering how that plays in when I'm looking at unwholesome thoughts. How do I know that I'm not just, let's say, covering over them, or sort of suppressing or pushing away, or engaging in a negative relationship with unwholesome thought?
Well, you already, most people anyway already have an unwholesome relationship with unwholesome thoughts. And the way that I would say that is that they spent their whole lives talking themselves into feeling bad by judging. Okay, then in fact, the judgmental thoughts, the thoughts of comparison, the thoughts of I like this and I don't like that, this is good and this is bad, or this is a nut and this is not, or this is black and this is white. That's the whole point then, is to recognize that we go around judging things, and in that judgments come that liking and not liking, and from that liking and not liking comes the wanting, the desire, and then the clinging. So the liking and not liking is what we need to start working on right at that point, when we can start to remember. This is why the Buddha talks about it in the sense of one's right effort
Hmm.
is to see an unwholesome thought as an unwholesome thought and then change it from an unwholesome thought to a wholesome thought. In the Anapanasati Sutta, they use the concept of gladdening the mind or brightening the mind, which is really wholesome. To brighten one's mind or to gladden the mind is a very wholesome thing to do, as opposed to darkening one's mind,
Hmm.
reminding oneself of all the problems and worries that are in one's life. That
Hmm.
we can start, as the Life of Brian movie, Monty Python pointed out, look on the bright side of life. But we have to remember to do that because we're so interested in looking on the dark side of life. And so, going back to your question about um, the delusion is that people have is that even though this thought is so harmful and so unwholesome, it's okay because it's my thought.
Hmm.
At least they're my thoughts, and I can think anything that I want to think, and you can't go around telling me what to think. Okay, this is, in fact, much of what I've just said in that little quotation is not true.
Hmm.
In the fact that they're not my thoughts.
Right.
Most likely, what it is that stuff that I've heard someplace else, I just remembered it, and now I'm repeating it without giving due recognition to the sources. You see people doing that with plagiarizing material in writing in universities or what, and everybody keeps saying, no, 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 you're supposed to cite your sources. And here we go around all day long, not citing the sources for the thoughts that we have, thinking that they're my thoughts. So that's one kind of delusion right there.
Yeah, certainly it feels like thoughts are an impersonal process because yeah, they're coming from your parents, your education, you know, what you heard on a podcast, or that's what happens to me. Like if I have something in my ear all the time, I find it has a way of making its way into my speech.
Exactly. But seeing that now is part of the waking up process.
Hmm.
Because when people are asleep and not thinking, even if they've been practicing meditation for years and they haven't gotten to the real grits of what's going on, they still don't see that these are not my thoughts. That in fact, that's the whole point of the noting method, is because people will say, "Well, what do you want? What should be noted?" And the answer is always to note what's there and to keep noting what's there, which means they get really good at noting what's there without making any discriminations about it. And
Right.
if they get very, very good at noting what's there, that means they get very good at seeing the dukkha that's there. And it's almost like a good meditator who's practicing the Mahasi noting method is moving into the garbage pit of his own mind. He moves into his own city dump, and all he sees is the garbage, which is not at all the teaching of the Buddha. So this is one of the ways that we become deluded is that we get used to the kind of thoughts that we have and think that they're okay as they are,
Hmm.
rather than recognizing, no, we've got to make some discrimination here because we actually have some kind of thoughts that make us feel bad, and we have some kind of thoughts that make us feel good. That's why we feel good sometimes and bad sometimes, is because of the kind of thoughts that we're having.
Hmm.
Okay, so let us say that somebody's got an interview coming up, an interview, let's say, for a job. And he can have the kind of thoughts of, wow, they really are expecting a lot, and I'm not sure that I've got the qualifications to do this, but I'm going to go in there and do the best I can. Okay? He's got the loser's mentality, and sometimes losers get the job when all the contestants are losers. But he can also go into that with the point is that I know this company, I've done my research, I've got this job wired.
Hmm.
I've got no problems with this thing, and I'm going to go in there. And my job now is to be friendly and jovial and happy with the interviewer and win the interviewer over to my side. In other words, I don't see the interrogator as an interrogator and me the victim of his interrogation. I just see two friends meeting. This is a mental attitude that you can develop.
Hmm. I have a question, and that is related to what you said about thinking everything's okay as it is. So if you have unwholesome thoughts that are coming up and you see
That's not thinking that everything is okay. The unwholesome thoughts are the thoughts that are thinking something's wrong here. You've got to fix this. You've got work to do tomorrow. You've got to answer that email. You've got to clean up your room. You've got a network that you've got to reconfigure. You got to do this, that, and the other thing are all the unwholesome thoughts. When you're having thoughts of everything is okay, then you're having those kind of thoughts. And you can tell the difference between those.
yeah, because I feel like from one standpoint, allowing what's there would stop that push-pull interaction, and allow you to take that step back. But at the same time, allowing the unwholesome thoughts also feels like it would just
But
allow.
that's your default position. That's your familiar position. That's the way that you've been doing things all along. This is going to take a little bit of effort.
Sure.
But it gets rewards immediately. Wow, what a relief it is. I don't have to think about that argument I had with Aunt Susie.
Mm.
That we can find relief in the taking our dinner out of the fire.
Mm.
That's the whole point about how is Nibbana is because you have to take the fire out of the mind. What is the fire? The burning, the wanting, the desire to get, the desire to get away from, the desire from wanting things. And so the kind of cooling thoughts that we would have would be everything is all right.
Mm.
I do not have to need Nibbana. What I've got right now is good enough. Nibbana will come when I feel everything is all right enough. Right now, everything is all right enough for right now, and I don't have to worry about the future. This is good. This Nibbana is good enough. It's good enough. That's the way that we need to start looking at it. Is right now is good enough, and having unwholesome thoughts is not good enough.
Mm. Okay, that puts things in perspective. Did I lose you? You may be frozen. Okay, I think.
Okay, you're back. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So this is kind of a subtle thing because if we tell ourselves that the thoughts that we're having are okay, but in fact the thoughts that we're having are unwholesome, then that would be a delusion, is
Right.
to say that the thoughts are okay when in fact they're not. Like the young girl who, with a razor blade, is cutting her arm and saying this is an okay thing to do. That's delusional.
Mm. Yeah, I think it takes some discrimination, I think, to recognize,
Mhm.
okay, that makes sense to me. So in terms of coming out of unwholesome into wholesome, gladdening the mind, everything's okay, everything's all right. The wholesome thoughts, the smiling, the taking the deep breath seem to be part of the strategy to get things rolling.
And then you're rolling.
And then you're rolling. Okay. And that's okay.
Right. Because the only place and the only time that we can practice is right here, right now. Let's get results right here, right now, and let's feel cheerful and glad about results that we're getting right here, right now. We become satisfied with right here, right now, and then we feel successful at being right here, right now. And that's basically all there is to it. because there's always just a right here and a right now. But Western mindset is all about future.
Yeah.
Rather than recognize there's only one thought that I've got right now that I have to change from an unwholesome to a wholesome thought. There's only one of them in the mind moment, and every mind moment is a new mind moment. And yet we think about mind moments by the tens of years of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a great big bag of stuff.
Yeah, there was a good analogy during a workout where my instructor told me, think of 10 reps in a set as 10 sets of one rep. So you just have to think about the one that you're doing as opposed to the 9 that are going to come right after that, where you start thinking, can I do this? Can I do all 10? And you're thinking, as opposed to just thinking perfect form on one rep.
Okay, that's actually excellent. That's right view, at least ordinary right view. Right noble view would be at least just one more step. Just one more step, just one more step, just one more step, just this one. Only this one. Can you do this one? Can you do this one? Can you do this one? That's the way that we look at it, is one moment at a time, 1 second at a time, one feeling at a time in this present moment. How am I doing right now? Everything's okay.
Yeah, I mean, part of me is going, okay, where does that lead? Or
it doesn't lead anywhere except into this moment. This is a good moment. Where you want to go already?
I think it's into the attainment sort of space that when people talk about sakadagami, anagami, you start thinking like, I mean,
but they're looking at an advance in a place to think about where they have never been.
Right.
Which means that it's always a construction, a mental construction. Right? And one of the fetters there is the fetter of ill will and anger. And the question then would be not what is it going to be like to live off into the future being free from anger. The question is the anger that I experience right now, how am I going to deal with it? If I could deal with the anger that I have right now skillfully, there's basically the way of looking at anger is the sense that there is anger that you wake up to, and then there's the anger that you didn't wake up to. And normally what happens is that we have a whole lot of anger going on before we wake up to it, and then the real anger starts is because we know we're angry. But some people, in fact, can be angry and not even know it. The old joke is that you go into the bar and there the guys are really yelling and angry with each other, and somebody says, "You guys cool it. Don't get angry." And both of them turn and say, almost red-faced, "I'm not angry.
Yeah.
And we're just having a discussion here." And both of them are about to kill each other. Okay, so we have a lot of denial in anger. And our job as Dhamma dudes is how soon can we come out of our denial of the anger and wake up to it and see that there it is? How many angry words do you have to speak before you recognize there is anger in your words? How many breaths do you have to take before you recognize there is anger in this breath? Okay, so here's the way that this works, is that after we begin to wake up to anger, we begin to see when we're acting angry, and we begin to interrupt it. Let us say that we can, after 5 harsh or 7 harsh words, finally we wake up to it. And then we begin to get on alert. I'm not going to get angry anymore. I want to hear that angry word. And so we get fairly good at down to just one word. We'll let one word out, like, "Ah!" And then we stop. That's just enough. We let it out that much. And then we get on better and improvement. And that new improvement then is that we get angry, but we don't let it out at all because we know how to jai in, and we cool off. And then later comes a time when just the niggle of anger is beginning to start, and we cut it off before it even gets to even internal anger. It's just a niggle of ill will or not liking it. Yeah, I don't like it, but that's okay.
Yeah, I find like if it comes up in me, I take a deep breath, and that seems to take care of it. I think I lost you one more time, connection wise.
Okay, you're back.
Yeah, sorry, I lost you. I was just saying,
Uh,
I take a deep breath, and that tends to cool off the anger. Like if I see it arising, I can take a deep breath, and that tends to sort of put it out before it starts, in a sense. That's
all right. So
the mindfulness to catch it. But.
all right. So there will come a stage when you can not like it, but that's okay that you don't like it. A way of saying that is back to a statement that Achan Samedo had to a question that Achan Cha had asked him when he was in the vicinity of a lot of young Thai women who were well dressed intentionally. And that Achan Cha asked Samedo, "What do you think?" And he says, "I like it, but I don't want it."
Yeah.
I like it, but I don't want it. So we can turn that around now to anger is that I don't like it, but that's okay. I don't like it, but I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm not even going to bother to feel bad about it. I just don't like it and just leave it at that. This is what you would call wise feelings. When we're wise enough to know that we like something, we don't like it, but that's okay. We don't have to get angry. We don't have to want it to be different than it is. But that's what anger is when we don't like something, we want it to change, and we want it to change. We really want it to change, and that's when we start to cling to the opposite of that. And that's where the anger comes from. The woeful state of being in hell is wanting something desperately that you can't have.
Yeah, I guess where the confusion arises for me is you don't want it to be different than how it is, but if it's unwholesome and you can do something about it, you do want it to be different.
Is it on the inside or the outside, though? Because if it's inside the mind and it's unwholesome and you want to get rid of it, out it goes. If it's something unwholesome on the outside world, just because you want it doesn't mean it's going to do the way you want it to do. That's in fact our judgment of society, where in fact the problem is never the society or the things on the outside that you see that's wrong or broken or needs to be fixed. It's always our attitude and our view of it. But the reality is that even if Johnny's angry, it's okay that it's with me that Johnny's angry. That's Johnny's issue. He's not my business. I don't have to get angry at Johnny because he's angry at me.
Yeah. It seems like the Stoic idea of the wisdom to know what you can change. The
right, exactly. Except that there is a caveat in there. And the caveat is that we can very wisely understand that the things that we cannot change are the things that we are not us or not inside, that we can change the things that are on the inside. We can develop the skills, but we cannot fix the Democratic Party.
Right.
We cannot fix those things because we have a whole lot of people who are trying to fix it one way or the other, and all they're doing is just being in competition and fighting with each other over which way each individual wants to take things. So the wisdom is that we can change what's in our own mind. And that's where and by the way, that prayer is used in Alcoholics Anonymous a
Mm.
lot. That's the AA prayer, they say, is God grant me the serenity to leave alone the things that I cannot change, and the courage to change the things that I can change, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that wisdom is actually inside or outside,
Mm.
because the things that are happening on the outside I can't change. And yet, this is how our society has been teaching us that if you don't have something that you want and you feel bad because you don't have it, then the right way to do is to go fix the outside world so that you do have what you want, and then you'll feel good. That's what our society teaches. That's what business is founded upon. You don't feel good about yourself? Fine, come buy my product and then you'll feel good. Come vote for my party. Come put money in my offering plate at my church with my religion, or come to my classes on YouTube, or my classes on the internet, or my classes at school, or come buy something I've got to sell. Those are the four: government, religion, education, and big business. Always have it that they've got your solution to your problems if you go to them.
GREB.
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 That's it. That's the GREB. Okay. And they are all there to prove to you that with their help you can change the things that in fact you can't change.
Mhm.
And so we have to get, that's the wisdom, is to see the lies that we are told.
Yeah, I suppose like I have questions arising around activism and what good we actually can do in the world.
Well, both the activists and the ones that they are activating against, they're all unhappy. If you're going to associate with activists, you're going to, that their unhappiness is going to rub off on you.
Hmm.
So if you're going to go to activists, and you have enough joy juice to feed the whole crowd, then your joy can rub off on them. But more than likely, in a crowd of activists, their activism is going to rub off on you. And and so maybe going and staying with activists is a perhaps dangerous thing to do.
Yeah, I think about be the change you wish to see in the world.
Yeah, except that be the change that you wish to see in your own mind. Screw the world. It's not.
I lost you again.
Quite so quickly.
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry, I lost you.
that's no problem.
I
I'm
lost you at
wondering if.
screw the world.
Well, that's actually a humorous way to say it, but the world is not my responsibility to fix.
Yeah.
But the world is certainly trying to get me to do it. I mean, everybody who's talking about activism, this and that, and global warming and COVID and all of this kind of stuff, there's all kinds of things to get active in.
Mhm.
But the activism doesn't solve the internal issues that each individual activist has. If the activist, in fact, would go home, sit down, think over his life, like they say in Star Wars, and get his act together mentally so that he was happy and well adjusted and everything like that, he wouldn't care so much about what he was active about. Then, in fact, if he was activist about global warming, then he would recognize that it was his job Just stop driving around all of these protests. Save a little bit of gas. Stay home.
Yeah. Internal.
Doing the yes. Make it. Bring it home. Always bring everything home. That the problems of the world are not out there. The problems of the world is inside my own mind and my own attitude about the world. Another way of thinking about it, and this is kind of advanced, so hang on with me. Right now, global warming is not bothering you very much in this very moment. I mean, you've got a shirt on, but that's all. So global warming must not be much of an issue right now. You can handle global warming, right? So if you can get into the habit of getting in okay with the way things are now, even if things start getting a little warmer, you can still be okay with the fact that things got a little warmer. You can handle it. If you happen to live in a house where there's enough flooding that comes, you can handle the first flood, but maybe the right thing to do is to move to higher ground. Then you don't have to deal with the floods. But global warming, you can't fix. You can only fix what you can do. But if a whole lot of people do what they can do, an example of that is Miami. Miami, because of the groundwater and the way that the porous and all of that kind of stuff, they have a huge problem in Miami. The right thing to do is for people to move out of Miami. Go someplace else that they feel safe and secure. I invite anybody who lives in Miami and is worried about global warming, come live on my porch. You're safe here.
Yeah, I think the logistics of relocating, all coastal cities, but is like.
I'm not trying to locate a coastal city. I'm talking about one dude.
Right.
Who wants to do something about global warming, then instead of being an activist, the thing to do would be move to higher ground and be comfortable. And all of a sudden, you've changed one dude, you. Okay, you're back. Just what I was saying is that you're only one person. One person can move to higher ground, and you're trying to move a city instead. You can't move a city, not you personally, but you can move to higher ground, you personally. So that's the wisdom, is to let the city take care of itself. One person at a time, making the decisions for themselves, one at a time. That when we think of the whole city having to move, that's kind of grandiose thinking. And we're taught to think in grandiosity, which is also a way of the mind working. That as children, one of the things that we do as children is learn to make associations. And we learn about family associations. And Billy belongs to that family, etc., like this. And so by doing those kind of associations, we begin also to see that some associations are open-ended. They're huge. And so we begin to then invent things that fall into a grandiose setting. All right. The fact there is no such thing as a city. There are a whole lot of individual buildings close together. But city, that's the mentality. That's the mindset. But it's not the mindset of one person. It's the mindset of a whole lot of people. It's a collective. So you can't change a whole bunch of people. Nobody could do that. You can only change your own mind. This is back to that wisdom again. to be able to change the things that you can change, and the wisdom to know that there are a whole lot of stuff that you can't change. Here's another way of looking at it, and that is the definition of the word world. How big is your world?
The things that are in my immediate vicinity, the place I go to work when I'm there.
Oh, you've heard me before. I thought that I was going to trick you into, oh, well, I've got an Andromeda galaxy, and I've got satellites, and I've got stuff all over the place in my world, okay? But all of that's always conceptualized. That the actual world that we have is the world that we are in some sort of touch with. In the teaching of metta, they talk about the 6 directions of the compass.
Mm.
And the Western idea of the compass is that it's not just a compass that's pointing north. We immediately think of north poles and north stars and north kinds of things. And so when we talk about the 6 points of the compass, there's no end to north. To where in the actual Pali, in the old concept, the 6 points of the compass had to do with the people immediately around us, in the fact that north is only the people that I'm in communication or in base with or in business with, perhaps fellow students at a school, that kind of thing. Okay, so the people that we deal with. Then we have our friends on one side and our family on the other. And then we have those that we've either turned our back on or the people who are trying to stab us in the back behind us. And then above us, we would have like the teachers, the police, politicians, your boss, whoever it is that you put above you. And it's not a whole fixed set of people, but it's who you imagine to be above you. And then there are those below you, like gas pump attendants, sales clerks, food waitresses, housekeepers, servants, this kind of people would be those below you. But it's always people that you know and see and have contact with. So the idea, let all the world be happy, is just a conceptualized kind of thing, can't not exist. That kind of world does not exist. Mm-hmm. So in reality, we have new rainstorms. The reality is we don't have global warming. I don't even know what global warming is. It's still always just a concept. But what people are beginning to understand is that they experience global warming by too much rain, too cold in the south, desertification, lack of rainwater, forest fires. This is how people actually experience it. But we call it global warming because that's just a concept in trying to lump all of those things together.
Yeah.
So if we look at it from the perspective of what's happening right here in this locality, that in fact, if I hate global warming and want to activate about it, then what can I do right now about it? One is that I can turn the heat off in my own mind. That I'm contributing to global warming by hating it.
Wow. Global warming. Nibbana, the global warming in your mind.
Exactly.
That's deep for me, Dhammarato.
Pardon?
I said, that's too deep now for me. That's too deep.
Yeah, just chill, baby. Just chill out.
Oh. Nibbana, the global warming in your mind. Yeah, that makes sense. For metta being the people that I know, that are close to me, that I see every day, that are part of my world, as opposed to conceptual, like all beings and in all directions, which seems like a nice idea. But
for almost all of us, Washington, D.C. is just a concept. It's just a concept. We don't, I mean, we've seen photos and things like that. I've actually been there. But when I was in Washington, D.C., it was the museums. I was in the Library of Congress, you know, so my version of Washington, D.C. is completely different than most because all they have of Washington, D.C. is Fox News, CNN,
Yeah, there's
MSNBC.
7 billion different versions of Washington, D.C. Or there's
Yeah, there's so many different versions of it. There's not one place, Washington D.C. There's thousands of them,
Mhm.
and none of them are between Maryland and Virginia. Almost all of the Washington D.C.s are between the ears. That's the conceptualization that we've got to go fix a great big world is too big. We can't do that. And not only that, but the world that we're trying to think of to fix is merely a mental conception in our own mind anyway. So all we have to do is change that mental conception from, gosh, it's going to be really terrible. Things are going to get really bad in the next 15 or 20 years. We really got to do something about global warming. Actually, we're hot right now. Why don't I do something about my own internal globe warming? I say, never mind, I don't have to worry about global warming. There are enough people already worried about global warming. Let them do something about it. I'm going to sit here and cool off. I'm going to do my little version of protesting global warming by having my globe chill.
yeah.
That's Nibbana. It's just chill. Everything's okay. I don't have to think about how bad things can get. I can think of instead of how good things can get, how nice it is, what a nice day it is. Global warming and all, this is such a nice day. Everything's okay. Not a problem in the world. These are the kind of thoughts, then, that are so much more wholesome and healthy than thoughts of, oh my God, things are going to get really bad. I wish we could do something about the oil industry. They're so bad, people.
Yeah. I don't know if you know, Dhammarato, about the meme of the dog sitting inside the burning building, and the dog is saying everything's okay, or like everything's fine, and the whole building that the dog is in is on fire. I don't know if you've seen this, but I'm wondering, like, where is the line? I guess in that particular case, get out of the building.
Okay. Here's the point, though, that a lot of people don't see. They think that the dog is too stupid to look around.
Right.
That the dog is actually, in a way, in fact, I don't think that you could find a dog that would be so stupid that it would sit in a burning building and laying comfortably and happy with perhaps the thought everything is all right. No, dogs are not as stupid as humans. Humans will go into a burning building. Dogs will come out. Okay, so in that regard, if you're sitting in a burning building, you should get out of it. That's wisdom. As well as, more than likely, you're going to be terrified with fear, and the fear itself is going to get you out of the building. And in fact, the fear may trap you, desperately trying to get out of a building, but you're not seeing things clearly and logically. That's why you probably heard and seen it even in some cowboy movies, that if a barn is on fire and the horses are in there, they might, in fact, need to blindfold the horses in order to get them out of the barn. Because everywhere the horse looks, he sees fire, and he's freaked out. So they will actually blindfold the horse so that the horse can't see where he's going and doesn't get freaked out, and then the trainers can just lead the horse out of the barn. But here's the real point. The point is that the room you're in right now is not on fire. And here you are thinking about dogs in a building on fire. Where's the fire? Is the fire in the building that you're in, or is the fire in the building in your mind again?
Fire is in the meme that I'm describing to you.
That was a slick Willie out. You got it.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose it's back to my question about like, this feels like a really fine line about what is denial, right? Like, oh, everything's okay, everything's fine, when everything is like not okay and everything's not fine.
Well, where did that thought come from? Everything is fine. And what was the thought before that?
I think that maybe there was like the recognition, there's the sati of like the waking up, seeing an unwholesome thought, and then the like, aha, I see you, Mara, the throwing it out, or the returning to whatever the meditation object is, or the smiling, or the feeling of metta.
Okay.
And then it would be like the intentional calling up of the wholesome that is driving the pattern forward.
Okay. Well, I've got that. But here's the question then is about, let us say that the thought that is had is there is work to do. I'll use the example of we've got to write an email.
Right.
That's the fire that the dog is ignoring. Okay. That there is work to do. Something needs to be done. In that analogy, the work to do, the dog needs to get up and get out of the house.
Right.
You do not expect the dog to put on fireman's clothing and piss on a hydrant or something to put the fire out. Dogs, that's not what dogs do. Okay. So let's talk about it in the sense then that the fire represents something that needs to be done. For the dog getting out of the house. For you putting on the fireman's hat and putting out the fire. Okay, so now that we've got it, that the fire is actually a job to do. And here you are in meditation and having a thought of something to do, but you don't get up out of meditation and go do it.
Right.
You just sit there thinking about doing it, but you don't do it. That's like the dog recognizing that the house is on fire, but he still doesn't get up and get out of it. Okay. But the reality here is that the thought of that work to do, that email to do, that fire in the mind, we're not doing it anyway. So why don't we have thoughts of doing the email when we're actually sitting in front of the computer with the intention of doing the email? Why are we thinking about the email when we're in fact sitting with the intention of meditating, which means the intention of feeling good, and here we are having fires in the mind?
Right. So the email in the context of meditation is a distraction, but the email when you're doing an email is just work to do.
It's just work to do. And if you practice meditation well, then when you go to do the email, you'll do it well. If you go do the email because you don't want to do the email, then it's drudgery. You might say the wrong thing. You might have the wrong attitude. The thing may be misunderstood or whatnot like that. But if you get yourself into a really good state and your mind is pure and clean because you've gotten the fire of that email out of your mind, and now it's just a little old pistol email to do, that you can handle that easily with the attitude, I can handle this. You'll probably wind up with a better email.
Yeah, no, frequently, like, yeah, I would say that would be one of the fruits of meditative practice would be having that clear, bright mind that can handle whatever arises or whatever comes up.
Right. But you're not going to have that clear, bright mind if you're saying, oh, I've got to think about the email because that's a fire and I better go do it. And then you don't. You see, that's what's really going on often is we give ourselves orders to do. We give our things something to do, which basically means that it's the critical parent that sets the fire. So the critical parent sets the fire in the mind and then says, poor dumb dog, get out of the fire. Go do something to get rid of the fire that I've just created in the mind. Thinking about the email creates a fire. The email itself is not a fire, but needing to get it done is an urgency, so I'm calling that a fire. We feel urgent. We feel like we got to go do something. And then we don't do it, but we're left with the feeling of urgency. So when we finally do get to the email, we do that with urgency. When the urgency was always optional, right from the very beginning. There was no fire.
Right. Yeah.
Your house is not on fire. That's the reality. The delusion is that you are a dog sitting in a house on fire saying there's no fire. That's the delusion. The reality is that you're a dog sitting in a house and there's no fire. But you're thinking about a fire.
Yeah. There's layers to this. I want to see if somebody's good with their Photoshop skills, they will go and make that.
I can see that the house on fire and the dog sitting there becomes a balloon.
Yeah.
And there the meditator below is thinking about, yes, I get it.
That's awesome. Yeah, it just, like, the email just is. It's just a thing. The urgency is the thing that is created.
Mm-hmm. That urgency, actually, guess what? The urgency is old. We picked up that urgency in childhood because the parents or the teachers told us that it was important. They urged us to go do it. And so we picked up the feelings of urgency. And now we're sitting in meditation as an adult feeling urgent. And there's no fire.
Right.
But every thought about getting something done brings on that feeling of urgency. Oh, I got to go do this. Oh, I got to go to the bank. Oh, I got to go put gas in the car. Oh, I got to go buy this on the internet. Oh, I got to go and I got to go and I got to go. Guess what? You can sit and enjoy your life for a moment anyway. Just sit and no place to go and nothing to do. And let all of that sense of urgency melt away. But we have to do it in a reality, in the sense of you have to make sure that where you are is safe. You got to open your eyes and look for sure. Is that room on fire or not? Look around. I mean, I'm looking here at the porch. No fires. It's not on fire.
Yeah, I think that I'm trying to remember the sutta. I think it is sutta number 2, where there are the things to be, like, avoided, and it is like just avoiding the mental movements and the mental habits of mind that are, unwholesome, but also the real life scenarios of, not going where it's dangerous, or avoiding elephants and dogs, and there was a whole list of things to, like.
Right. There is that section in that sutta about, it goes this, asava, to be avoided by knowledge. Those to be avoided, dealt with by using. Those to be dealt with by avoiding, etc., like that. That's the way that sutta is set up. The very, very first part of it is about the defilements to be dealt with by seeing, is actually the word that is used. You look and you see. And then the Buddha talks about it in the sense of there are things that are worthy of attention, and there are things that are not worthy of attention. And the things that are not worthy of attention are such that by paying attention to them, our well-being decreases. And when we're paying attention to things that are worthy of being paid attention to, then our welfare increases. And then he gives some examples of the things that are not worthy of attention, like who am I, what was in the past, What will the future be? Okay, so questions about who am I are not worthy of attention. The reason why who am I is not a worthy question is because you don't have a good answer to it. There's no question, there's no answer anywhere. I mean, people have been asking who am I for the past 2,000 years, and no one has ever come up with a decent answer to that question.
Yeah,
And part of the reason for that is because every one of us who asks that question, we're a crowd inside. Sometimes we feel like a nut, sometimes we don't, sometimes we're this, sometimes we're that. I invite every student, go write down on a piece of paper all of your attributes to define who you are, and then go do that same list again tomorrow, and you'll find out you've got a different list than you did yesterday. Who you are keeps changing, so that's not a useful way of trying to ask the question. I see that on Reddit. Where people will ask, what are the right questions? And somebody will say, I know the answer to that. The right question to ask is, who am I? No, that's not the right question to ask.
Yeah,
that'll get you all balled up.
I was surprised to see that in the sutta, because it seems to be, directly counter to that Advaita Vedanta or Neo-Advaita style of questioning, which is like the school of Ramana Maharshi and I guess countless numbers of teachers today.
Well, that's you're right. That's what happens is proliferation.
Right.
Who am I proliferates because there's no end to what you can be. But the wise attention, the appropriate attention is, and the way that it's stated in the suttas, is this is suffering. This is the cause of suffering. This is what it's like to be free from dukkha, be satisfied, and this is the method, this is the practice to be free from it. Now, in the next sentence in that, it says that someone who understands the Four Noble Truths completely becomes free from personality view, the question, in fact, who am I, as well as Silabhata Paramasa, which is basically our attachment to the world, how the world should be, how things ought to be, attachment to rites, rules, and rituals and ways to do things. The Buddha has that. That's the second fetter, is our attachment to the world, about global warming.
Right, the first three fetters. Yeah, I think like to be fair to the question, I feel like who am I points to the looking and seeing there's nobody there, or there is no self. Like I feel like it is anatta that is being pointed to in that question of who am I, where you do the search, you look and or you look, the analogy is looking for a TV remote, and you check under the cushion and there's no TV remote there, and you go, I looked, I turned my attention back and asked the question, I looked thoroughly and I didn't find anything. So that must prove the point that there is no self, or there is this idea. But I'm confused, I think, because in the Buddha's teaching, if I understand it correctly, that's one of the wrong views. There is a self, there is not a self. Those were two
okay.
of them.
Here's a way for people to understand that. In Sutta number 22, the Buddha says that he teaches only one thing, dukkha nirodha. He does not teach about a self or no self or any of that kind of stuff, and I'll get into it in just a moment. But his main teaching is dukkha nirodha, or the Four Noble Truths. But he was asked that came up because he was accused, that he was reviled and accused of teaching something that he did not teach. He was accused of teaching that upon the breakup and death of the body, the being is annihilated.
Right.
Upon the breakup of the body, the being is annihilated, and the Buddha says that he doesn't teach that. Now, one of the things that's very curious about that he was not accused of, upon the breakup of the body, the existing being is not annihilated. He wasn't accused of that. He was accused of, on the breakup of the body, the existing being is annihilated. Okay, if the being is not annihilated, then that means that the being is possibly going to reincarnate or be reborn. This leads eventually to, and I use the word eventually humorously, eternalism or semi-eternalism. Eternalism means that one is born over and over and over again, that samsara cycles not only in this life, but it cycles to the next life and the next life after that on infinitum, basically. Where what he was accused of was, no, that existing being dies at death. It's annihilated. This is what we refer to as annihilationism as opposed to eternalism. And then there is the quality of wrong view. And the wrong view, which basically has the statement of I can get away with it, is also saying there's no authorities, there's no holy men, there's no this, that, or the other thing. And basically also saying there is no self that has to be punished. So the wrong view the Buddha talks about is nihilism. So you have nihilism, you have annihilationism, and you have two forms of eternalism, either full eternalism or semi-eternalism. But semi-eternalism means that it's eternal for a long, long time, and then it'll be over, but it's still a long, long time into the future. It might as well be seen as eternalism. Okay. But the teaching of the Buddha is nowhere in that list. What is it that the actual is the teaching of the Buddha is much more a, you could use the term, he was a temporarianism. He was not a nihilist. He was not annihilationist. He was not an eternalist. That what he taught is that when the self is created and becoming, it does that in order to do the experiencing of the dukkha. That the self is actually the vessel within which dissatisfaction is carried. And when there is no dissatisfaction, there is no self to carry that dissatisfaction.
Right. My suffering, I am suffering.
Mine, exactly. Okay, so when we think of it as ownership or mine, but a better word to use, because basically this is a translation error. The way that the word should have been translated, anatta, should better be translated as no soul, not no self. Because what we're talking about here is there's no eternal soul. But there is this self that comes up in certain circumstances based upon conditions. Here comes the whole point of the teaching of Paticca or Ittiyapapajayata of the Buddha, that things happen due to dependencies. Samuppada means that things come into existence, or they are real, they become real because of a condition, paticca. Paticca conditions everything. So there will be conditions for selfishness, and then there will be times where there are no conditions for selfishness, which means there's no selfishness there. We can think of it, in fact, as the distinction between altruism, when we're thinking of friends, when we're thinking of compassion, when we're thinking of goodwill towards all people, then we're altruistic, we're not being selfish, we share. But then when we feel afraid, when we're in fear, we want to protect the self. And so we become selfish. And when we're becoming selfish, that means I am not going to give my money to my friend because it's mine. And I need it for my survival.
The self that arises is temporary.
It's temporary.
Is like, oh, this is a fearful self, or this is a self that is
a sad self.
Or a sad self. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So there's sad self, there's anxious selves, there's fearful selves, there is unrequited love selves. But joy is different than that, because joy is almost never selfish. Joy, you've got so much of it, you want to share with other people. You don't want to try to keep your joy. You want to share that.
Hmm.
Isn't that interesting? That joy is not selfish, but fear is selfish. I want to protect myself. I want weapons. I feel sad, and I want other people to feel sad too. Misery loves company.
Hmm.
And I can feel really grieful on my own when my mom dies, but if I can get everybody in the family to come grieve with me, boy, can we have a grief party.
Pity
So
party.
misery loves company, and the company is always accompanied by selves. That
Right.
everyone is selfish.
Pity party, not Piti party.
Yes, exactly. We can have a pity party or a PT party, up to you.
Yeah, let's have a Piti party.
Yeah, all right. Because the PT party is the one who is had by winners. We can win this. You probably heard me say before that everyone is an emperor of their own pile of dirt.
Yeah.
The question is, are you going to be buried under your pile of dirt, or are you going to be sitting on top of it? That's where Nibbana is. Once you're sitting on top of the world, then you can chill, relax. If you're buried under all that dirt, then things get hot. You're bothered. You want out.
Right.
But when you're on top of your own pile of dirt, you're free.
Hmm. Yeah, so we have to get on top of it.
Mm-hmm. And what is that to get on top of? Then our dirt, which means to get on top of our unwholesome thoughts. To remove the unwholesome thoughts and have happy thoughts instead. And there is some subtlety in there. One of the things that I will say is that right view is a skill to be developed, and that you're actually asking the right kind of questions. These are the kind of questions that right view would ask in order to see what is unwholesome and what is wholesome. Some things we absolutely know for sure are unwholesome, and some things that we know are absolutely wholesome, but there's a huge gray area in there.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Thoughts of harm, thoughts of setting bombs, thoughts of putting bombs together, thoughts of blowing up Washington, D.C. These are all unwholesome thoughts.
Those are Unabomber thoughts.
Yeah, Unabomber thoughts are definitely unwholesome thoughts. Even multi-bomber thoughts are unwholesome.
Mm-hmm.
So thoughts of harm, thoughts of doing some damage to ourselves, thoughts of suicide are unwholesome. And then we can have those kind of thoughts that we know absolutely are wholesome. No place to go, nothing to do, the spring comes and the grass grows by itself. That's a very wholesome thought. It's easy to see. How about everything's all right, everything's fine? That's a wholesome thought.
Zippity doodah, zippity day.
Zippity doo dah, what a wonderful day. That's a wholesome thought. I feel good. Da, 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 da. I can knew I would now. That's a wholesome thought. Okay, so we begin to see that there are some thoughts that are definitely wholesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is a gray area, a vast area in between, which I would call junk thoughts. To where in the beginning the student would think, well, thoughts are okay. Thoughts about going to work tomorrow and thoughts about what I'm going to do tomorrow, those are not so unwholesome thoughts. Well, maybe they are unwholesome if they are preventing you from feeling really good right now. If you're having thoughts about going to work tomorrow and you feel like crap, then those are not wholesome thoughts. But if you're having wholesome thoughts about, wow, I'm going to really take care of that thing tomorrow. I know exactly how to handle the boss, and I know exactly how to handle that network or whatever the job's going to be, and you're doing it with great gusto. I can't wait to get in there tomorrow because I'm going to take care of that situation. Then that's very wholesome.
Hmm.
So a lot of this has to do with attitude.
So
The attitude of the winner, the attitude, I can do this.
where does right attitude, how it, because I know right view, right intention, right speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration.
Okay. Normally, Sanma Sankappa is translated as either right intention or right thought. And you can see that both of them are somewhat correct in the sense that if you have the right attitude, or let us say you have a certain attitude, then the thoughts that you will be contained within that attitude.
Hmm.
In other words, if you're having very, very fond thoughts about your sister, you're not also having mixed in thoughts with weapons that you're going to use on her. But if you're having thoughts of hatred for your sister, then thoughts of weapons to use on her may get mixed in with that. Okay, so your attitude determines the kind of thoughts that we're having.
Okay.
I also don't generally use the word intention because intention often has the quality of wanting or desiring built into it in the sense of wanting something that you don't have. But the attitude that we start with is normally the attitude of a loser, the attitude of a victim, the attitude I need help, the attitude of I do want something from someone because I don't have it myself. And change that into the attitude of I do have everything that I need. Because then your thoughts will be different. If you have the victim's attitude, then you're having thoughts of sucking up.
Sure, sure.
If you're having the winner's attitude, you don't have those kind of thoughts.
Yeah.
Now that you see that, that's it. Okay, so you can understand why they've translated as thought, but we're looking at something not just this instant or this tenth of a second thought. Because we are talking about this individual thought. But now we're talking about the behind that thought is the intention, or better still, the attitude. So if you have an attitude of a winner, you're not going to have loser's thoughts. And if you have a loser's attitude, you don't have winner's thoughts. If you do, they're fake. They're false. They're not real.
Yeah.
Thoughts like, oh, we'll get through this somehow. Oh, don't worry about me. I'll be okay. You know?
Yeah, I feel like smiling seems like a good, easy way out of some of that loser's victim mentality, like the body language. It feels psychophysical, like in terms of like how I hold myself, my attitude towards things, like the posture, like facial.
Posture and attitude are very closely related.
Yeah.
If you've got an upright attitude, you're going to have an upright posture. If you have a victim's, loser's, weighted down attitude, you're going to show that in your body posture too. So it's really deeply related. We are integrated that way, that our body influences and affects our feelings influence and affect the mind influences and affects our feelings, and the mind influences and affects the body. These things all work together. And this is one of the things that we can begin to see. Oh, if I have control over my mind and have control over my breathing in my body, then I can also begin to control my feelings. I can control the way I feel. How do we do that? If we're wanting to have wholesome feelings, then we have wholesome thoughts. The way I say it is, we have been our whole lives talking ourselves into feeling bad. Now it's time to talk ourselves into feeling good. Having Nibbana thoughts will give you the feeling of Nibbana. Everything is cool. Everything is all right. I can handle this. And then you begin to feel like everything is cool. I can handle this. We literally talk ourselves into the way that we feel. We've always done that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was just thinking, like, I see the interconnection between how thoughts influence feelings, how the body influences the feelings in the mind. I see that interconnection. I feel like I've heard some other teachers talk about keeping the two separate, like the seeing the feelings as feelings and the thoughts as thoughts. And because trying to influence the feeling with thoughts like, I shouldn't be feeling this, or like, go away, is just going to proliferate more thoughts, as opposed to make the feeling go away. Like the way out of feeling bad would be to try and affect it on a feeling level, as opposed to trying to affect it on the thought level.
There's a difficulty or a catch-22. If you feel a particular way and you don't like it and want to feel different, then wanting something that you don't have makes it worse. That's real dukkha. If I am feeling sad and I don't like feeling sad because I've told myself you should not feel sad, then now I'm feeling double sad. I'm sad because I'm sad, and I'm sad because I can see and judging the sadness.
Right.
That's a double duty there. There's another way of handling it. And that is that, okay, I recognize there is sadness in there. Let me explore that for a bit. Let me breathe into it and see if I can control it and take any use out of it. Let me breathe into it. Let me notice it. Let me see if I can move it from where it is. Normal sadness is down in the bottom gut. Can I move that feeling lower down? Can I move it up? Can I move it up into the chest? By manipulating that feeling of sadness, I begin to take control over that sadness. That now I'm not feeling sad, and now I'm feeling curious about the sadness. Before I was just sad. Now I'm curious about sadness, and that's a major improvement right there.
Yeah, curiosity and interest, I feel like takes you miles. I've heard this referred to as like softening into, or like allowing, in terms of recognizing when, or noticing when things come up and allowing them to be there.
Well, feelings are different than when you're looking like that, especially the way that you're holding your hand. That indicates that we don't have any control over the mind, and that's not true. We do have control over the mind, and in fact, we can have fairly quick control over the mind within a second. Feelings, however, are much more chemically oriented. And so for those things, we can't deal with those within a second, but we can deal with them within 30 seconds, which may seem like a really, really long time if you got your hand caught in the vice.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the way then that we deal with it, is that we can, if we have turned the faucet of misery on with the thoughts, and now we're feeling miserable, we can turn the faucet of the thoughts off and still feel miserable, but we can begin to talk ourselves back into feeling good. In other words, we can now nurture the misery that we cause ourselves. We get ourselves miserable by, darn it, you really messed that up. You did such a bad job on that. Next time you're going to do even worse. You're a terrible human being. I don't even think I want you around anymore. You know, those kind of thoughts that we have. And then we feel miserable. So now we can wake up and we say, look what I'm doing now. I can nurture myself instead. There now. I see that I have made myself all miserable and everything, but we'll get over this. Let's take a deep breath and we'll think of happy thoughts, and that misery will just kind of melt away. And sure enough, within 10, 20 seconds, maybe a minute later, we feel much better because we stopped having the kind of thoughts that were making us miserable. We could do exactly the same thing with the adrenaline and anxiousness. We can feel really, really uptight because we talked ourselves into feeling really uptight. We gave ourselves some job to do. Oh, you've got to go to the bank. I mean, the bank's going to burn down if you don't get there and get your money out, you know, and so we feel all anxious. But we don't go to the bank. We sit there full of anxiety. And so now we say, wait a minute, I see that I'm thinking about the bank and making myself all uptight. The bank can take care of itself right now. I'm okay. Let me breathe in and breathe out and feel this anxiety, get a handle on it, look what anxiety is, recognize that I did this anxiety thing by talking myself into it, so now I'm intentionally going to talk myself into coming back to a state of relaxation.
Right. Yeah. So I
This
talk
is
myself.
then Nibbana. You can
I can
go
talk.
ahead. That
I talk myself into it. I can talk myself out of it.
mm-hmm.
Um,
And you can change the way you talk really quickly, but then you can talk your way out of it, and that takes a half a minute to a minute or whatever like that. It doesn't take long, especially when you're breathing well. Anxiety is very easy to get rid of. It just doesn't happen instantly, but it certainly you can do it faster than taking a pill. Pill's going to take 20 minutes. You could do this in 20 seconds. By turning that faucet that's turning that adrenaline on, you can turn that faucet off and then breathe, and that anxiety, that tension will just melt away.
so the thoughts are the handles on the faucet cueing the adrenaline drip.
Turn that
Negative thought, drip of adrenaline, negative thought, drip of adrenaline.
Exactly. Or sometimes those thoughts are like turning the faucet on full blast for a short time. Mostly what you were saying, yeah, a little thought gives a little drop of adrenaline, another little thought gives another drop of adrenaline. When we stop that, that adrenaline clear up. But it's also the possibility that you hear something or something happens and immediately it's just, whoa,
Yeah, I had
full-blown anxiety attack instantly, all at once.
the experience today where I like almost knocked something over, and it was that instantaneous response of like stopping the bottle or whatever it was from dropping off of a counter that I bumped into. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, immediately that response arose in me of like, yeah, I don't want this to fall. I don't want this to break.
Now, here's the question.
Yeah.
With that response, did you also have the skill to catch that bottle before it hit the floor and broke?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What would you have felt if you had seen all of that, had that response, and the bottle still slipped out of your hand and broke?
I've got to clean that up now. Or
Right. But also you have the sense and the feeling of failure.
right.
Mm-hmm. But actually, the next thought is, well, I got to clean it up. That could almost be a wholesome thought.
Yeah, almost. Yeah. Or it's like it's
Mm-hmm.
not a big deal. It's like don't cry over.
Not a big deal. Yeah, I can clean this up now. No
Yeah.
problem. But oh no, I screwed up when it broke. That's the feeling that causes the big adrenaline rush.
Or even worse, like I'm a screw up. Like I always do this. Or yeah.
Right. That's when that critical thought, that critical parent in the mind can go yakety, 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 and we begin to feel really bad. But we can now see that stuff and say, wait a minute, I can clean up this mess happily. I don't have to torture myself for the failure. I can enjoy the cleanup.
Right. Yeah, that's possible for sure.
Yeah, well, that's the distinction between the critical thinking and the nurturing thinking. That you criticize your way into it, now you can nurture your way out of it.
Yeah, it's an attitude shift.
It is an attitude change, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And as you develop that attitude, it becomes the real attitude of a winner to the point that, hey, man, it doesn't matter how obstructed or full of hindrance the mind gets. I can clean that out. I can come back to this present moment. I don't have to respond in anger. I've got a choice here.
Yeah. I really see like the responses to things. Some of them are automatic, but some of them I feel like are the ways that we've been taught to respond. Or we've seen other people respond that way. And so we think of it as drudgery. Like the example that pops into my mind is like washing the dishes. Like it can be totally fine, or it could be seen as this, drudgery inducing task that you have to do every day.
Often, mom sets that tone. Billy, it's your time to do the dishes.
Right.
Okay. And in that regard, with that, I'm reminded of the old Disney movie of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and that song, "Whistle While You Work." So we can wash the dishes and we can be happy. We can whistle. We don't have to have it drudgery. It's all a matter of an attitude.
Yeah.
And attitude can be developed. It's a skill to be developed. The skill of, I can do this. I can handle this. This is not a problem. This is not a worry. No worry, folks. In Thai language, they say, "Mai mi panha," "Mai mi alai." The word alai means like the word what? Like a lie would just be, what is this? But "Mai mi alai" means "Mai mi what?" Nothing. They got, there's nothing here. "Mai mi alai." There's no place, nothing.
Mai mi alai. I like
"Mai mi alai."
Mai mi alai.
Or "Mai mi panha" means no panha, no trouble.
Mai mi
No
panha.
worries. Yeah. In Australia, they say, "No worries, mate."
Yeah, no worries, no problemo.
Yeah, exactly. That's the attitude. The attitude is, this is not a problem. The attitude of, we got this wired.
Yeah, no worries.
No worries.
It's all good.
It's all good. Yes. Okay. These are all wholesome thoughts now. So now we've got a good handle on what's a good wholesome thought. Good wholesome thoughts have to do with everything is all right, everything's fine, no worries. And unwholesome thoughts are big time worries.
Yeah.
So, back to Nibbana. What is Nibbana? Nibbana is when we're chilled, we're cool. Everything's fine. No heat. The fire is in the mind. That's where it is. The house is not on fire. Look around. The house is not on fire. So you can feel safe and secure. Zach, this has been a really great talk. I'm pleased. I'm happy with you. You got it.
Thanks, Dhammarato.
We'll see you soon. Hope to see you on the Sangha. We got Sangha. Everybody's getting together on the weekends. We have one for U.S. Have you seen that come by?
Yeah, I've seen
You're
it.
invited to join.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'd love to.
Excellent. All right. See you later.
Take care.